Alright, this is the second take of how to use quartertone scales in a reasonable way. I'm going to do a little demo of what it sounds like when you extend the scale to go beyond the normal 12 tones. So that's the kind of sound you get. It's integrated with the normal 12-tone scales. Except you got these kind of notes. And the normal scales. Okay, so the use of quartertones is not completely random, and the worst thing you want to do with a quartertone guitar, which is a fret in between every fret, you don't want to treat it like a chromatic instrument. That'll sound awful. I have no use whatsoever, never heard of a use for going one step up. So if you go, so E and then F, you wouldn't want to do like go up to half an F. You might find a use for it later, but I've never found a use for it in the music theory that makes use of quartertones. Doesn't really use it either. Okay, so what's going on? From the perspective of a minor-oriented scale, what you really have going on is a bass pentatonic scale, which is the red dots and the blue dots. So E, G, A, B, D, E. Okay, and if you're used to counting the frets on the guitar, I have side dots, but you're gonna have to mentally double the frets. But there's a good thing about it, because instead of 5 being where you go to the next string, where you normally go, okay, because you've doubled the frets, it's actually 10, which makes it really interesting when you're trying to do the notation for it. So normally a minor scale would be like 0, 2, and 3. We have to multiply it times 2, so it's 0, 4, and 6. It just happens to be that 10 is a fourth, which means it goes to the next string. So the notation becomes kind of easy to grok, because you have 0, 4, 6, and you add 10 to the next string, 10, 14, 16. That's just kind of an interesting coincidence. And another thing is, because I'm using quartertones, I've gotten in the habit of just tuning all the way to fourths. I go E, A, B, G, C, F. So instead of B and E, I go up a half step, or half tone, so that it's just fourths all the way up. So it's the same exact scale patterns everywhere you go. That way, that's a fifth chord. And that's a fifth chord. There's no exceptions to the rule. Alright, it just simplifies trying to think about music theory. Okay. And so what's happening is you have a pentatonic chord, and interestingly, you got 5 notes, and normally you have 7 notes in a scale. The thing is, it's a choice for one of these notes. It's either low, or it's medium, or it's high. Low would be Phrygian, high would be minor, and in the middle would be this median tone, which the Arabic tone is usually used in a scale called Bayati. So Phrygian sounds like. So that's this choice. And for minor, okay, and if you pick the one in between, that's characteristic of Bayati family of scales. Okay, and then there also happens to be another one where you move up. You know, instead of saying 3 and 6, you say 4 and 7, which is. And that's really just the same phenomenon where you take a minor third, where it's 6 frets, and you just pick the exact middle spot, rather than picking the low one like this, or picking the high one. Right, so this would be a major scale. This would be minor. And then this is called a rest, when you make the third slightly flat from major. And it's got a characteristic sound like if this is your, so your root is do. Okay, and in all cases that I know of, everywhere that you have a quarter tone, it's because you've cut a minor third in half. There's also an interesting thing. It simplifies the notation that there's 10 frets within a fourth. So you know, you can think of this first digit as string number. And so this is second string 0 fret, second string 4th fret. It's nice and simple that way. But one of the other things that simplifies it is, you know, there's a normal 12-tone fret at the number even. And if you have an odd number, you know, if you have 3, it's going to be 6. So everywhere you have an odd number, you know, the ones around it, they all need to add up to 6, because it's going to be taking a minor third, cutting it in half. Okay, and because you're essentially improvising over a pentatonic chord, and you're basically making a choice for what you're going to use for the second and what you're going to use for the sixth. And it's basically the same shape, you know, it's like kind of like the Phrygian shape, but it's starting on fifth. So B, C, D. So that would be like the minor choice. I mean, well, Phrygian, if you consider it from this as the root. High. Now you get to use the Dorian scale. And the Dorian is kind of similar to rest. So if you think of Dorian, we make the minor third slightly sharp, and you essentially get rest. one string, whole tone, another string, whole tone, another string. Which means that over here, you get two minor thirds. And of course you're making the choice whether you cut it here, here, or here. These three locations or these three locations. Okay, and usually if you have to match up with a fourth or a fifth somewhere, you'll end up not using that neutral, doing either the low one or the high one, like. But if you're here, and you aren't being forced to use this, or being forced to use this one, you could use the neutral one. And what that does is that basically breaks the symmetry of the scale, so all the modes don't sound like they're the exact same shape. Just play with different roots, which if you think about it, the modes, there's basically only one shape for scale until you start getting into things like okay, but other than that shape, you know, Dorian, Locrian, even minor, they're all the exact same shape. Okay, and another way of looking at this, by saying that there are no jumps of fret size 1, because the whole reason you have a quarter tone guitar is because the half tone is a little bit too small, because where these tones come from, they come from harmonics off the string, like octave, fifth, and you know where the fourth is, and then there's another one here slightly flat of where the major note is, and there should be one around minor. There it is. Just a little sharp of it. That harmonic there, that's the whole reason why you have a whole tone. That's a true whole tone right there, at that location. And if you go a little flatter, there's a whole bunch of little notes in there, and that's where the quarter tones come from. And if you bend it a little, you can actually hear it matching the harmonic from the previous note. Alright, so if you got 6 notes to span, you can do 4-2 or 2-4. You can do 3-3. So this is like a whole and a whole, and then you got some way of cutting it up. So that gives you a scale like that. Next. 14 minutes. Alright. Okay. Another thing. One of the reasons to do quarter tones in microtonal music, the 12-tone notes are not really in tune in terms of the harmonic series. The timbre on a string actually is a chord, and if you play 2 notes together, you kind of got to bend them to make them go together. So, just an example, you'll see me doing quite a bit. Major third, not being bent at all. It sounds like you hear that slow, you know, wah, 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 wah. You want to make that go away by bending the bottom string a little up. Almost like a power chord, and it feeds back like crazy. The sustain is much longer because when they're slightly out of tune, the strings take the energy out of each other. Like more energy comes through it. Okay. And I have a similar phenomenon where when I have a minor third, I'll bend this top string up a little bit. That way less energy gets taken out of the string by them being out of tune with each other. So instead of that beating sound like that, make it go away by bending this up a little bit. And then the top string. Okay, and same kind of thing. When you play a half tone, you know, like go from E to F, you really should bend the F a little bit sharp. Kind of the same thing when you do the median tone, bend it a little sharp. Right. And I was also bending the minor third a little sharp as well. So the minor third needs to go a little sharp, and the major third needs to go a little flat, which is why when I have this major third, I bend the bottom string to make this interval go a little bit flat to bring the notes together, and in this one I bend the top string to make them go apart. And you kind of got the same thing with fifths and fourths, but they're pretty close. You can't always hear the difference. You bend that top string in a fifth just right. Bend it wrong, you can hear it wobble, which implies that if you do a fourth, you got to bend the bottom one a little bit. If you do it by ear, you bend it until it feeds back more. There'll be less energy taken out of the string, and it'll have longer sustain. Another thing, these kinds of scales, they're not necessarily octave equivalent. Like here, it would be like E, F sharp, G, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, rather than, you know, F is here, F is here, you know, pattern playing. Not always octave equivalent, because what you're doing, you're stringing together little scales of like 2 and 3 notes. Like one little scale would be whole tone, whole tone. Okay? So that little thing centered around D, C, D, E, and then I would join that with, say, E, F, and G. All right, and sometimes I'll pick, like, say, whole half. So when I'm going, I'm using the F here, but I use the one that's slightly sharper when I'm trying to emphasize this minor third interval. Okay, and I got a little loop ready that's basically just playing a E minor pentatonic scale. So in between these two minor thirds, I have freedom to pick one of these notes, one of these 3 notes, and one of these 3 notes. And generally, you're going to pick them where there's a pattern like this, where it's low on this string, middle on this string, and higher on this string. So you get like. So it's a minor pentatonic scale that you hear underneath it, and I'm basically just choosing what second I want. And the choice is either or. And of course, it's usually influenced by what happens a fourth or fifth away. Chord. Okay, that's the end of the video. It's getting very long. I was told that the previous video was way too long before you even did anything with some quarter tones. But now I started off with them. Hopefully this is much more understandable why you would even have a quarter tone guitar. The main thing is trying to use it chromatically, like super chromatically, doesn't work. I'll do an example trying to do it. I don't know what you do with that. The whole point of having quarter tones is cutting minor thirds in half the same way you can already cut a major third in half. Alright, that's it for this demo.